The universe of Star Wars has highlighted an abundance of creatures and cultures, which is why I begin to wonder why we haven't seen more of the Chiss Ascendancy. The Chiss in Star Wars are extremely fascinating, at least I think so. They are a group of beings who practically distance themselves so far away from the main events of what we see in Star Wars that they are allowed to have their own whole political system and their own wars and their own leadership outside of the Republic and the Empire, and they're even dealing with a lot of infighting within their political families and the military and what have you. So, if you're not particularly familiar with the Chiss, which is understandable, and it's one of the reasons why I'm making this video in the first place, they are, as I mentioned, a separated group of individuals who exist far away in the galaxy, and an important character who you might know as Thrawn, which we have seen in Star Wars Rebels and the 𝐒𝐓𝐀𝐑 series, and also, more importantly, the Legends and canon novels. He is a character who is a Chiss, and originates from the Chiss Ascendancy. Now, how he managed to get from the Chiss Ascendancy, who are so far away, and end up in the massive war with the Empire versus the Rebellion, that is an entirely different story, and we're not going to talk about that here now, but the point is, if you've seen Thrawn, you will generally know what the Chiss species look like. So given the fact that the Chiss are very, very interesting, at least in my opinion, and that they do have centuries of stories that could be told, why haven't Disney Star Wars created more stories around the Chiss yet? Which is kind of mind-boggling considering that the Chiss have a lot of material that could be explored. And I'm sure a lot of people in Star Wars would find them incredibly interesting. Think about it this way. Star Wars The High Republic came out of nowhere. And right now, Star Wars The High Republic have a massive, huge fan base. And a majority of its success come from comics and novels. That's pretty much it. Comics and novels is what has expanded the High Republic era, with the exception of Star Wars 𝐒𝐓𝐀𝐑, but that's more centered around the Dark Jedi and less about giving context to the entire High Republic era, which the comics and books do in a quite specific manner. So given that the High Republic has given a clear example of a way to expand on an era or a group of people within that era, we could apply the same strategies in order to explore the Chiss Ascendancy. So what I'm proposing is that while they're working on the highly risky and expensive TV shows and movies where they explore other elements of Star Wars, they could make a new lineup of comics and novels that is all about the Chiss and their conflicts and all of their history. They could even do it in a linear manner where we start from the origins of the Chiss and then it goes all the way up to the first Thrawn book known as Chaos Rising. I think this would be incredibly interesting and something that Star Wars definitely should do. But obviously the question of who will be responsible for creating all this, well, I think it's quite obvious. Timothy Zahn, the original author of Thrawn, should be at least a lead creative producer and writer of these comics and novels. I think Disney should allow him to have a bigger team of authors and creative people to help him make these stories. I'm not saying that he will be the one to actively write all of them, because that would be too much for one person, at least if they're going to try and match the similar release schedules that we have with the High Republic, with their novels and comics. But more that he will oversee a lot of the creative choices on what people do with the Chiss species, so that things move accurately in line with the pre-established lore that we have from the Chiss based on the canon novels, and maybe sprinkle in a little bit from the Legends material as well. I think all of this is very fascinating, and I really think that with an opening where Timothy Zahn could explore more of his ideas of the Chiss and kind of what they really mean for the Star Wars galaxy could be very valuable to this franchise, and it will definitely satisfy a huge number of fans who I know personally are very dedicated to the Chiss species. Again, the Chiss are very important, even though they are not as broadly talked about in Star Wars, because they are not directly involved with the main events that we have seen against the Rebellion and the Empire, or the Republic versus the Separatists, or even the Final Order versus the New Republic. If I remember correctly, really the only time where the Chiss have been highly involved with the main events of the galaxy, which is unfortunately no longer canon, would be the Old Republic era, where some Chiss had some important roles to play in those stories. But besides from that, they haven't really been touched upon that much, so I think if we had some comics and movies that were creatively produced by Timothy Zahn, with the help of a bigger team under him that could help him push out the content more effectively, then I think that this edition of Star Wars would benefit the franchise and satisfy a bunch of fans. And all of this, if it's done in a correct manner, it could complement the upcoming movie Heir to the Empire, where Thrawn will eventually be defeated. Now this doesn't mean that he has to die by the end of the movie, so he could be defeated and then he could retreat back to Chiss space and meet back with his old friends and possibly find a way to become one with the Ascendancy again. I would personally love to see this in Star Wars, but let me know in the comment section below if you share the same opinions. So, with all that said, never forget, the Force is with you.